A horde of monsters with red eyes and evil expressions menacingly advances on the ruined cities, and the remaining people retreat to the few surviving fortresses. Against the backdrop of the city, a warning sounds about the prohibition to leave the fortress and approach the 9 mysterious abysses leading to the lairs of underground monsters. She is in tears and with wounds on her face, clenching her fist, and hears threats from her brother Kai, who considers her escape an insult and a blessing. Wen stands in the center with a confident smile, while the 3 men around him look menacing and ready for action. Wen and 3 men stand in front of the girl at the edge of the abyss, and one of them threatens her, saying that she can jump into the abyss herself. She, with wounds on her face, screams that she will not help deceive the goddess Lin, and he will never touch her, accusing him of attacks and intimidation of witnesses. The purple-haired man smirks as he says that Ling Ling will obediently marry him, while the other man holds the girl against the wall. Wen laughs ominously and reaches out to the frightened woman in tattered clothes, who is clearly afraid of his approach. 2 men listen to the sound with caution. One of them asks what it was. The image shows an ominous shadow with red eyes and a smile watching a masked creature with red eyes as it prepares to attack. One is surprised to see the B-class beast appear, and the 3 men tense up and prepare to fight. A dark creature with red eyes screams, begging not to be eaten. A man holds a frightened girl tightly as a shell explodes nearby and silhouettes of people run in the distance. Wen tries to stop a girl with damaged clothes, who fearfully retreats in front of a man in a helmet. The image shows a powerful monster with red eyes and sharp teeth, which deals a strong blow, destroying a person's clothes. One calls for help in a panic as 2 men look in fear at the bloody monster and the injured man on the ground. Wen shouts for them to run faster as the 2 men panic and try to escape. He runs away from a huge monster with red eyes that just punched another person, causing a splash of blood. Wen turns around abruptly with the phone in his hand, expressing fear and tension. He moved forward sharply, creating a sense of rapid movement. Wen watches a huge monster with red eyes tearing something up overhead as a girl in a school uniform backs away in fear. A wounded girl on her knees looks at a bloody monster with a long tongue that hangs menacingly over her. She cries and says that being in the hands of a monster is better than. She turned around sharply, hearing an approaching sound as a huge paw landed next to her. She steps back in fear as something on the ground explodes with a loud noise next to her. A huge creature with red eyes appears in the city, landing with force, causing cracks in the ground. The image shows a residential building against a sky with clouds and green trees. Wen slammed his palm down on the surface, making a loud sound. Wen slammed school for failure to ensure safety after son's death. 2 people, a woman with purple hair and a man in a vest, press themselves against the wall, trying to hide or escape. He and she are sitting on the floor, and she says that this bony creature might have snuck in from outside. He angrily asks if someone was hiding on the walls of the abyss and ambushed his son. He accuses his interlocutor of evading responsibility and demands that his son's killer, be it a man or a monster, be punished. 2 people are creeping across the floor, and one of them orders to track down a bony monster that cannot leave the fortress. In the city, a creature with red eyes jumps from roof to roof, creating jump marks against the backdrop of skyscrapers. Against the backdrop of a city and mountains with carved faces, a masked creature jumps from a height, creating a sense of dynamic movement. One stands surrounded by 2 masked monsters as a third one rapidly approaches him. A creature with red eyes and a mask growls, declaring that it has returned to its master standing before it. Yuan looks forward thoughtfully with his arms crossed in a darkened setting. Wen summons dark energy from the book, surrounded by 3 evil creatures with red eyes and terrifying smiles. He says with a smile that he will now send his interlocutor to the afterlife, and this evens the score between them. Yuan holds 2 cards with a golden symbol in his hand and prepares to say something. Yuan explains that his trump card has a monster capture system while standing surrounded by flames and floating cards. He mentally declares that the monsters that others flee from are easy prey for him, while the giant hand controls the monster that threatens him. Yuan ordered the being named number 3 to return him to prison, and he nodded in response. He soars into the sky above the city, leaving behind a trail of speed and the sound of whoosh. Yuan reveals that B-class bone beasts are the strongest monsters he has captured. He has 3 in total, and they can kill ability users and newbies. He sits on the monster's back against a wall of barbed wire and thinks that in this doomsday world, it's still not enough. Wen calmly activates the magical portal, emitting a purple glow, looking at it with concentration. He thinks his main task now is to get out of prison legally. Yuan walks down the hallway and says he'll leave the rest to someone else. The image shows a sinister creature with horns and multiple eyes, surrounded by sharp tentacles, ready to attack. Sister Lin Ling strongly encourages not to humiliate yourself and suggests to think differently, holding the hand of a worried girl. Renyu looks worried and says something with worry in her voice. Yuan stands with his fist raised. A man with red eyes smiles next to him, and a third man explains something with gestures in the dark. She looks away sadly, holding back tears, and talks about her brother, who is a 9th-level supernatural being. She expresses shock and fear with wide eyes and tears on her face. 2 girls in school uniforms look worried. One of them tries to cover her skirt after noticing something unexpected. Yuan stands by the coffin at Mr. Wang Kai's funeral, surrounded by people, some of whom smoke and watch silently. The image shows a monument with the inscription, "Beloved Son Wang Kai," and a portrait of a man in front of whom candles are burning and 3 incense sticks are standing. He exclaims in shock that Wang Kai is dead, not believing this news. She cries, wiping tears from her face, trying to contain her emotions. 2 girls in school uniforms are surprised by the words of a man who asks if they are mourning his son and praises his choice of bride. Yuan stands with his hands behind his back as another man turns towards him with clenched fists in a tense situation. She appears worried and sweats slightly, expressing doubt or anxiety in the conversation. Yuan raised his hand thoughtfully and began to explain something important. 2 girls in school uniforms anxiously discuss Wang Kai's death. Yuan explains that he will marry the deceased through a ghost wedding so that he will not be alone down there. A girl with red hair exclaims, asking how the living can marry the dead, turning to another with purple hair. She stands with her eyes closed in front of a jewelry display case and says she will let her brother go if someone is waiting for him downstairs. Wen insistently demands an answer, saying, "Choose, answer me." The red-haired girl panics and warns Ling Ling that he is crazy and should not agree. She cries and expresses strong emotions, tears rolling down her face against the cold lighting. In the secret room of the Wang clan, 2 people sit in the shadows, one of them looking thoughtfully towards the window. Wang Yan, level 9 ability, vows to destroy all who bullied the girl. Yuan sits on the couch and another armored man sits opposite him. They're having a serious conversation in a room with a round window. Yuan orders to first take care of her brother in prison and after the wedding to send her father. Yuan promises to arrange for the girl's brother to end up in prison and accidentally die today. The door automatically unlocked and opened with a loud click. In a prison where there are no rules except kill before you get out, a group of serious-faced inmates approach a man in a black t-shirt. The image shows a man with a bald head and an ominous smile against a backdrop of purple light, creating a tense atmosphere. A group of dark-clothed men with empty eyes shout, "Copy!" expressing agreement or readiness to take action. A group of men dressed in the same clothes advance forward with determination. One of them says that they need to crush an ant. Wen lands hard, making a loud impact sound. Wen sits on the bed and reads the book carefully, immersed in the content. A panicked man reports that all the cameras have opened and calls for people to run. Wen is reading a book while sitting on a step as another man approaches him with surprise and excitement. Yen sits in a prison cell and carefully reads a book, concentrating on studying its contents. A man with a stick warns that there are no more guards, while another with a knife prepares to act, and a bald man shouts, calling for them to hurry up. Yen slammed down the book as he sat on the bench and said he would watch, while another man stood by the open cell door. The man, in shock, begins to speak but stops mid-sentence. Yuan and the other man watch in surprise as the group of people suddenly freezes, with one of them asking what's going on. A man looks up in horror at a demonic creature with horns and many eyes that approaches him menacingly. Wen uses the silken technique Killing Array, dealing multiple slashes to enemies that scream in pain. He asked in horror if this was Asura's hell. Yuan stands with bloody wounds and resolutely declares that he will destroy them all, including Ra's. The image shows a massive metal door with locks in the closed position. Man asks prison warden if Ling Yuan's safety is guaranteed as guard stands nearby. The image shows a man with glasses smiling and introducing himself as Warden Tian Chi. A man with a mustache smiles happily and clasps his hands, introducing himself as the manager of the royal palace. Deputy Prison Chief Bai Ling cautiously asks if anyone is approaching from outside as a man in glasses smokes in a chair. A man with a mustache looks around warily, while a relaxed man smokes at a table, and a woman in uniform stands against the wall, watching them. Yuan explains that this door cannot be broken even by a tank. A man in glasses with a cigar in his hand tells Steward Wang to relax, sitting with his feet on the table. He punches through the wall with a powerful blow, causing a loud crack and destruction. The man turned around abruptly in shock from the loud explosion. A security guard and a woman in uniform were seen in the room. The arch suddenly collapses with a loud sound, creating an explosion and a collapse of stones. Yuan stands calmly with his arms crossed as a huge dark figure with red eyes greets him. He stands quietly with his eyes closed as another man points menacingly at him and says he will report the incident. He slams into the wall with force, accompanied by a loud explosion and flying debris. The image shows a girl in uniform with a serious and slightly worried expression on her face. Wen stands in front of a frightened man in an office as a huge dark figure clenches his fist next to a body slammed into the wall. Panicked man warns he will eventually be torn apart on his own. Wen stands with his back against a surface, preparing to speak or act. A group of armed soldiers with shields and helmets advances forward, and in the distance the word empty is heard repeated. 3 soldiers are firing machine guns while a man standing in front of them tries to get their attention by shouting, "You guys!" The man panics and shouts that he personally trained his interlocutor and calls him reckless. Yuan calmly says that the soldiers are now his spider puppets, while a woman with spider limbs hovers above them, holding the strings. The man falls to his knees and begs for mercy, admitting that he was forced to follow orders from the Wang family. A man with glasses, sweating, shows the device in his hand and says that this thing is useless to him, while the sound of the unlocking process is heard. Yuan snaps his fingers, and the soldiers with weapons prepare for battle, making reloading sounds. A man in glasses screams with fear and tension, expressing strong emotions. A man is shot with a gun. The bullets hit his body with force, causing explosions and blood. Yuan stands next to the burnt body on the floor, and the woman in uniform says that he gave the chip but did not promise to leave him alive. Yuan shows a small object to a man in a white uniform, who looks at it in surprise. She's wearing an officer's uniform and looks at the glowing object in her hands, looking worried. Yuan holds out his hand with a soft smile, holding a glowing ball. She looks closely at the object she holds in her hand, with a slight look of concern on her face. He is about to eat something by holding it to his mouth and saying that he will eat it. Yuan stands, and she kneels, saying that the owner must have had long-term plans to seize control. A woman in uniform, with a serious expression on her face, listens attentively to her interlocutor. A huge demonic creature with horns stands against the backdrop of a burning city, and the speech says that the military is looking for a place to isolate it. Yuan stated that the Blackwater prison beast pit accepts this. A woman in uniform, with a serious expression on her face, listens attentively without saying a word. Yuan orders her to inform him when Stair arrives in Blackwater, to which she confirms that she understands. She is in uniform and with a serious expression on her face, addressing her interlocutor. The image shows a modern building with large glass doors against a backdrop of skyscrapers and a sunny sky, with no visible characters. Yuan stands outside with a hood over his head, breathing heavily and looking thoughtfully ahead. Yuan overhears one of the men expressing surprise that someone would come straight to the dojo after being released from prison, and the other adds that he doesn't know about the ghost sister's wedding. 2 young men are discussing someone. One suggests that this person might be something special. The man with the camera turned around abruptly when he noticed Yuan entering the room and pointed at the screen in front of him. Wei-Sing adjusts his glasses and holds up a camera as he explains that 3 electronic bugs are monitoring the network. Yuan looks closely at 3 cards with a mysterious symbol, keeping one hand in his pocket. He notices a lot of flying insects and exclaims that there are a lot of them. Yuan stands calmly as another man with a camera flies back in panic at the sudden appearance of a flying insect with red eyes. He looks away thoughtfully, lost in his thoughts. He explains that 3 bugs were enough to monitor the prison surveillance and the Wang family network, and with that many, half of the fortress could be monitored. Yuan, turning his back, picks up his phone as if he's about to show or send something. The man with the camera asks Yuan to be careful while he looks away carefully. He says with a tense expression that someone really needs to do something, against the backdrop of a large building and a red sky. Yuan, raising his fist, addresses the hooded man as he walks away, saying that they are the only members. He, hiding with the camera, asked who was there, remembering that 3 months ago he was almost caught while spying on Wang Kai, and that he was saved by him. He firmly pushes away the man with the camera, who looks worried and tries to take a photo. Yuan explained that he saved him back then because they had a common goal, while the other man listened. He races in a large SUV along a narrow mountain road, raising clouds of smoke and dust. He is driving and asking about the possibility of the living marrying the dead, while another man sits silently in the back with a glass of wine. Yuan sits in her car with a glass of wine and says, "She's lucky in some ways." He sits in the car and looks ahead with a slight smile, wearing a seatbelt. He threatens to personally slit her throat so that she will return to the underworld forever and serve the second son of the Wang family. Yuan and another man are sitting in a car, the latter holding an axe and talking, and he looks tense and worried. Seaweber Turkey on the license plate is moving along a deserted road. Yuan drives in a panic, trying to avoid a fight with the creature that grabs the hood of the car. A monster with red eyes and sharp teeth rushes forward furiously, letting out a loud cry. A man in a car panics and reports that the beast with the bone mask is indeed here, while another tensely drives the car. A man with a beard insistently orders the driver to shake the car and keep moving. Man in car is terrified as three monsters with red eyes and white masks attack the vehicle. A panicked man says intelligence has reported a beast as a terrifying creature with red eyes and sharp teeth looms behind him. Yuan stands on top of a cliff, looking into the distance at the gloomy sky. He looks thoughtfully into the distance, as if pondering something important against the backdrop of the rock and sky. The image shows an aggressive character with red eyes and sharp teeth who delivers a powerful blow, accompanied by a message about 100% protection of hydraulic armor. A monster with red eyes and a white mask attacks with powerful blows, reducing the enemy's defense by 70%. Wen is hit multiple times by red-eyed creatures and his defense drops to 1%. The car explodes with loud flashes, and a message appears on the screen about the protection being reduced by 200%. A huge creature with red eyes and sharp teeth lifts a man in tattered clothes with one hand, preparing to strike. Yuan stands with his hands in his pockets, watching two aggressive masked creatures prepare to attack. Yuan appears exhausted and injured, breathing heavily and expressing great anxiety. He carefully draws his sword from its sheath, preparing for the upcoming event. Yuan watches in horror as someone receives a fatal blow, accompanied by the sound of slash. He stands with a knife in his hand in front of a dead man on the ground, while two monsters with red eyes approach him. Yuan lifts a black card with a golden symbol in front of his face, looking forward with concentration. He watches as a creature with many arms attacks another man, knocking him down and surrounding him in purple shadows. He uses the shadow technique, attacking a monstrous shadow with a red eye and sharp claws. He encounters a dark shadow shrouded in purple energy that suddenly attacks him from behind. Yuan explains that the shadow camouflage skill lasts for 2 hours and declares his intention to fulfill the phantom marriage contract while a sinister entity appears behind him. He stands at the entrance to the Narcissus Cemetery. Noble, hearing that the bride in the ghost marriage is very beautiful. He and the other man walk down the path to the building, discussing that there is no need to worry, as the royal family has hired someone. He and the other two retreat abruptly, startled by the sudden powerful explosion at the stairs. He and two other fighters in identical armor soar through the sky, preparing for Team Ninth's mission, Abyss Squad. He sits on a large horned monster skull against a backdrop of mountains and trees, watching the battlefield. He announces that lightning will awaken and he has already appeared, expressing seriousness and determination. Wen reveals that the royal family promised someone the right to massacre Area K after the wedding, which is why the bloodthirsty maniac agreed. He confidently stated that the safety of the ceremony is now guaranteed. Yuan assures that monsters below S rank are not a threat, holding a glowing amulet in his hand. A man in armor with glasses squatting down smiles and watches someone labeled Observer, U. A man in armor with glasses runs forward at a rapid pace, while in the background, Yuan watches him along with another man. An explosion caused by a blue flying device occurs against the backdrop of the sky and a pole with wires. A man with a wide smile holds a small insect with red eyes on his finger and watches it. The image shows a cityscape with tall buildings and the words psychic tracking, creating a tense atmosphere. Yuan jerks his hand away in fear as he notices the approaching flies and expresses concern. A man in a cybersuit says with a smile that he wants to see the memories of the interlocutor in order to catch him and find his owner. He suddenly noticed that the world around him had darkened and exclaimed in surprise as he hovered between the skyscrapers. Wen looks at his damaged hand in horror and can't believe the weak controller backfired. In the city center, someone slams into the ground with force, causing a powerful explosion and cracks in the asphalt. Yuan, adjusting his glasses, notices a D-class soul monster howl notes that his trap worked on the observer as expected. Yuan is tensely silent, a bead of sweat rolling down his face, reflecting his inner turmoil. Yuan and three men meet a man at a limousine with a staircase and a row of gravestones in the background. He places his metal hand on his chest and bows his head, expressing respect or apology. Yuan demands to see his bride immediately, addressing a man in a white coat while three people watch them from behind. In a spacious hall, three people are discussing the return of the scout. One of them asks if he has returned. Yuan stands with his back turned and he with silver hair looks at him, listening to him explain something. Yuan pointed sternly at the man in armor, expressing dissatisfaction. The man sternly ordered him to come closer, saying that he had questions. Yuan and the other man in armor respectfully placed their hands on their chests, expressing respect and indicating their advisor status. The image shows a man with a beard looking away with an expression of determination and tension. Two armored fighters discuss information from the Fortress Foundation with tension and anxiety. Yuan stands with his arms crossed in front of two armored men who are kneeling, with lifeless bodies hanging around them. He stands with a tense look, energy sparking around him, and one of his companions expresses concern. Yuan looks forward with a serious expression and red eyes, creating a tense atmosphere. He hears a man with a beard getting angry and saying that no one cares about the future, while others discuss the dangers of creating a powerful enemy. Yuan looks in the mirror and straightens his tie, telling himself to behave well. She, in a wedding dress with a bouquet, warns that even death will not save you from the consequences of breaking a promise. Yuan looks away with a slight smile, expressing confidence and calmness. The man assures Yuan not to worry, saying that Director Wang will definitely let his brother go, leaving him surprised. The man with the beard speaks, confirming the words, addressing Director Wang. Yuan sits in a wedding dress with a bouquet as two men talk and one of them nervously agrees. She looks worried and slightly tense, as if something is bothering or embarrassing her. Yuan looks down with a smile, hands in his pockets, and carries on a conversation. Yuan noted with a worried expression that the advisor was acting very strangely. She is sitting on a sofa in a wedding dress with a bouquet, and a man in a white suit is looking at her from behind. The bearded man answers decisively, definitely, as Yuan watches him thoughtfully. Yuan says, "Yes, sir," and she, in her maid costume, smiles, bowing her head and folding her hands in front of her. She says that the girl who needs to be saved is named Anqi. Yuan follows the woman down the stairs, and they walk in silence in a luxurious hall with red walls and portraits. She looked back with surprise and alarm, as if she had heard something unexpected. Yuan looks ahead with surprise and caution, as if trying to understand the unexpected situation. She warns with a serious expression that this place is a death trap. Yuan explains that in addition to the 5 level 9 users in sight, Director Wang has assembled an elite team of 100 graduates to ambush the cemetery. A group of fighters in identical armor and sunglasses stand in formation, preparing for a fight or a mission. Yuan scratched his beard thoughtfully and noted that this was quite an impressive composition. She, dressed in a maid's uniform, looks forward with a smile and folded hands, expressing calmness and confidence. She adamantly states that she cannot simply watch the creature die while the dark figure hovers above her. Yuan stands on the stairs and claims to be using his psychic powers while a girl in a maid costume listens to him. The man covered his face with his hand, expressing fatigue or disappointment. He says that the abyss is his beacon of light and his highest faith. Yuan looks from behind at an angry girl in a maid costume who clenches her fist and clearly expresses her displeasure. She grabbed the man's hand and said that this was his only chance, causing him to look surprised and tense. Yuan looks ahead carefully and she anxiously holds his hand, expressing concern. Yuan watches as many people gather at the large golden doors in the luxurious hall. A man with a beard walks forward with determination, while a girl in a maid costume standing behind him looks worried. He holds a glowing blue crystal and speaks of the need for something important. A group of people with different facial expressions listen attentively. One of them speaks in a decisive tone, creating a tense atmosphere. Yuan looks away thoughtfully, his face partially illuminated, creating a tense atmosphere. The man said that after an investigation, it was confirmed that the woman had used a false identity to gain entry, calling her a cockroach, and she had moved away in fear. He warns Yuan that he will use psychic influence for the final blow and suggests that they escape while he counts to 3. Yuan counts to 3 while holding the glowing crystals in his hand, and the radiation around him begins to change. She casts the spell Psychic with concentration, burst, creating a powerful glowing energy blast between the hands. Yuan attacks the man with force, surrounded by purple energy, while she watches from afar. Yuan receives a powerful blow to the chest from another man, causing him to bleed. Yuan, with a knife in his back, remains silent, and the girl in the maid costume anxiously asks why he didn't run away. Yuan clenches his fist and accuses the opponent of using the camouflage ability, expressing determination and anger. Man with serious expression looking forward against darkened space. Yuan with purple glowing eyes suddenly swings his hand, and in front of him kneels a man with blonde hair. He sternly warns that escape is impossible and orders them to kneel and admit all crimes. He shows the cards, quickly shuffling them in his hands, looking ahead with concentration. Yuan suddenly said, "Time," and rose into the air, surrounded by rapidly falling black fragments. Yuan notices that the attacks are scattered and calls the opponent a clown, remaining calm under the influence of the energy. He smiles and shows off a pendant with a yin-yang symbol surrounded by blue flames, raising his hand as if preparing to attack. Yuan reacts with surprise to something while someone screams that he is dying, laughing. Yuan quickly deflects the flying bullets, demonstrating his reflexes and strength. Man with red hair screaming with anxiety, expressing strong emotions against dynamic lines. Yuan throws a card with force, causing a powerful dark energy to strike the enemy in mid-air. He looks serious, and another man with metal inserts on his face tries to explain something in a panic. She anxiously asked why the psychic energy had suddenly reached the peak of the 9th level. The image shows a close-up of the mouth and chest of a character in a suit with a red bow, who is likely saying or shouting something. Yuan selects and equips an item with a fire symbol, displayed on the screen as a hologram. He holds a rare monster card and prepares for battle with concentration, while a girl in a maid costume watches him with concern. The image shows a map with the character Abyss Silver Spider, and an inscription about increasing mental strength by +100. He is surrounded by electricity and states that control-type users are fragile and can destroy them with one move, even if they have reached the 9th level of deception. Yuan, surrounded by lightning, threatens to show the true wrath of the thunder god before the death of his opponent. The man said with a serious look that he did not have the strength to help her escape while she was standing behind him in a maid's dress. Yuan and several other people fall through bright lightning and energy flows in a dark blue space. She struggles to say escape as several people fall, surrounded by lightning and bright light. Yuan activates an electromagnetic lightning field, lifting several people into the air and being surrounded by lightning. He stands in a dark shirt and a light jacket, his face expressing seriousness and concentration. Yuan clenches his fist in concentration, surrounded by electrical discharges, preparing for action. He releases the attack with force, saying, "Now face divine punishment." Yuan is struck by a powerful lightning bolt, which leaves him very surprised. He states that another illusion created by psychic interference will be destroyed by his Ultra Thunder Strike. He, in armor with blue hair, delivers a powerful electric shock to a huge creature with red eyes and a toothy smile, causing it to look surprised. He asks in horror why a monster of the awakened level appeared here. The man with the beard reported that the barrier had disappeared, turning to Master Rie. Yuan tries to break free from the grip and screams to be released. He smiles with a slight grin, showing his teeth against the dark background. The image shows a creature with a white mask and red eyes delivering a powerful blow that spurts blood. The image shows a powerful explosion with red and black flashes flying out, giving the impression of a strong impact or destruction. Yuan stands at the center of the exploding energy, watching everything around him. He is covered in blood and has wounds on his face, expressing shock and fear as if he had just experienced a violent collision. Yuan stands in the distance and screams as a man in a white cloak holds an unconscious girl in a maid costume and people lie around him. The man claimed he had come to conduct a ghost wedding ceremony and announced its official start. The man with a tense expression on his face said that he had been waiting for a long time and had finally received his interlocutor. Yuan stands in the shadows, watching a figure with red eyes on the balcony of a luxurious hall. A man with a beard looks forward attentively, expressing seriousness and concentration. Yuan, with a tense expression on his face, is experiencing strong irritation or anger. Yuan stands with his hands in his pockets, an unconscious girl lies next to him, and a menacing, dark monster with red eyes looms behind them. Yuan says with a smirk that the daughter of the Ling family should be buried with something important. The man orders Yaner to begin the destruction by sharply pointing his finger and giving the command. He orders the target to be surrounded, explaining that the extermination squad is made up of elite student council members from all generations of Radiance Academy and cannot be allowed to escape. Several cloaked warriors are fighting, and one of them announces that the hunt has begun. Several cloaked warriors surround the hall, ordering that the enemy not be allowed to escape, even if he grows wings. Yuan stands with a serious expression, hands in his pockets, surrounded by a light fog and a glowing background. The image shows two monstrous creatures with horns and glowing red eyes playing woodwind instruments while surrounded by purple energy. He reacts with surprise and anxiety to unexpected news or events. Two demons in caps play wind instruments, causing purple energy beams to appear around them. A bright purple light suddenly flashed in front of the clock building, illuminating the surrounding area with powerful energy. Yuan and his allies fight off the ghostly creatures. One of them gets injured and expresses determination with blood coming from his eyes. The woman explains that it is a monster that attacks with sound waves and causes total destruction in the abyss as two men listen to her warning. The man with fiery blue energy on his face said decisively that they would now get down to business. She stands in a fighting stance and mentally marks President Lin's protection radius at 10 meters. The man in armor announces that President Zhu's protection radius is 20 meters. Wen stands in armor and reports that President Twilight's protection radius is 30 meters. Yuan holds his neck with a serious expression, feeling the touch of his armor, and thinks about President Mo's 500-meter protection radius. Yuan explains that the beast uses sonic attacks but has weak physical defense and urges them to follow him to eliminate the threat. The two men exchange confident glances. One of them says he understands. A group of people in raincoats quickly run down the street, leaving behind glowing trails. Yuan smiles as he releases magical fire from his hand, while the other man behind him looks surprised and wary. He screams in panic that the object he is holding is poisonous. Two cloaked men watch in horror as a bloody flash explodes in front of them, striking a third man. Several fighters are hit hard, sent flying back with bloody wounds and cries of pain. Yuan viciously attacks three opponents, dealing them powerful blows and causing them pain and fear. She explains with tension that paper coins are the spores of a creature. Yuan stands on a cross covered in purple vines next to a huge spherical object called Yin, Corpse Mother Vine. The image shows a man with golden brown eyes and a beard, who stares ahead intently without saying a word. Yuan looks forward thoughtfully, his face serious and focused. In front of the giant creature with one glowing eye and many tentacles, there's a gloomy atmosphere surrounded by fog and destruction. Yuan warns that if the situation reaches its limit, none of them will survive against the backdrop of dark and glowing purple tentacles. Yuan orders the weak to take cover from the ghost coins and the presidents to move at full speed as they behead Yin's body. The three characters respond with a decisive "Roger" and prepare for action. Wen stands on a giant hand covered in purple tentacles, while a glowing man in a cloak hovers in front of him, preparing to fight a huge creature. Three cloaked figures fight, surrounded by bright magical energy, preparing to attack or defend. Yuan explained that due to the dense cannon fire, which was like a blizzard, they could not advance forward. Wen rushes forward, clenching his fists in concentration and preparing for action. He stands inside the hall and looks around carefully, assessing the situation around him. The man with the dark collar speaks confidently about the keeper of the fortress, expressing seriousness and determination. Two people in combat suits are surrounded by blue energy streams. One screams, asking why their formation is being absorbed, and the other clutches his stomach. The image shows an unknown character with an open mouth and raised hand calling on his power, surrounded by blue energy beams. Wen is surrounded by blue flames, saying he is ready to sacrifice everything for victory. Yuan speaks with a smile, and the other man listens to him with surprise and a drop of sweat on his face. Against the backdrop of a burning house, he tells how the brother who raised him burned his adoptive father for refusing to acknowledge him. Yuan concentrates on manipulating powerful blue energy while holding a glowing cross in his claws. He delivers a powerful blow with his glowing sword to the protective dome above the building, causing a bright flash of energy. He expresses intense pain and tension, with blood coming from his mouth and beads of sweat on his face. Yuan is puzzled why the process ended early, although there were still 3 minutes left. He, wounded and bleeding from the mouth, hovers next to a huge creature with a bright pink eye and a crown of thorns. The image shows large purple tentacles hanging from a dark object against a backdrop of greenery and a gray structure. The man explained that he had equipped a card with the effect of increasing the monster's evolution speed by 10%. Wen screams as he sees the man in the silver suit fall hard to the ground, while another man stands nearby in shock. He accuses his interlocutor of killing his son and adopted son, expressing rage and pain. He shouts with anger, expressing strong irritation and tension. Yuan stands on crisscrossing purple threads in the sky, his cloak fluttering in the wind as he calmly watches his surroundings. The image shows a man with a beard looking forward with a serious expression on his face. Wen looks ahead with a tense expression and a bead of sweat on his cheek, clearly worried or concerned. It announces that the skill's duration has ended, with a purple and violet glow in the background. He stands in concentration, surrounded by mystical purple energies, preparing for the upcoming event. He reacts to an unexpected event with alarm and surprise, expressing shock and tension. He stands smiling next to a floating head in a mask with purple tentacles attached to it. Wen is horrified as sinister purple tentacles approach and wrap around his head. Yuan accuses his interlocutor of killing the old butler and his older brother. He, surrounded by blue flames, threatens to destroy the enemy along with himself, warning not to underestimate the Wang family. He uses a powerful technique called space enshroudment, creating an energy explosion and expressing surprise. Yuan reveals that the adopted son he put his soul into is now one of the 7 guardians of the dead of the Vine Mother. The image shows the robot's legs wrapped around a purple snake-like creature against a backdrop of cracks and glowing lines. Yuan interrupts someone by saying that his sister is still. A man with a beard shouts, expressing anger or determination in a conversation. Yuan said the word kill with a serious expression in a tense situation. He concentrates on releasing a powerful bolt of energy from his hand, surrounded by bright flashes of electricity. He is surrounded by blue flames and energy, preparing to attack as he tensely clutches his hand to his chest. Yuan delivers a powerful blow surrounded by bright blue energy, hitting the blurry creature. He is surrounded by bright blue energy, as if immersed in a powerful stream of light and power. He explains that he replaced his sister with a shadow double. Yuan holds a sleeping woman in a white dress in his arms, while a huge hand clutches another girl in a maid costume. Wen says the apocalypse is inevitable, and only monster worship will help us survive, calling on us to join in to save humanity. A crowd of hooded men holding lit candles moves through the city, and one of them shouts loudly, raising his fist in the air. On the roof of the building, a robed man calls for worship of monsters, claiming that the fortress will not protect them, and behind him stand 3 hooded men. Yan stands with his hand in his pocket. People around him are surprised, and one is silent, not saying a word. The woman smiles and hands over a piece of paper and says that everything is perfect. Yuan, holding a piece of paper, doubts and says that this is too much for a simple bone beast. She offered to join, reminding him that he had survived the cemetery incident. She, smiling and blushing slightly, says that this is the only way to show her devotion. Yuan said he had business to attend to and began to walk away while she looked after him in surprise. She is strongly calling for Boneface Beast, known within the organization and on the world stage, so that he becomes the one true god of this world. Yuan stands on the roof and watches the huge crowd of people filling the street between the buildings. He landed abruptly on the roof, and the other man turned away with a serious look, as if ignoring his appearance. A man named Wang Mo, a guard of corpses, kneels in a room with a staircase in the background. He reports that Huang Long, who inherited all the assets of the Wang family, is under investigation. Yuan reveals that the strongest fire elemental has awakened in the fortress, and Wang Yang has officially become his disciple. He looks forward thoughtfully, his golden brown eyes reflecting his inner thoughts. He stands with his hands in his pockets, showing no emotion. He looks down thoughtfully, his eyes hidden behind shiny glasses. Wen stands with his back to the man who silently looks into the distance from the roof of a building. The image shows a building with the word fire written on it. Dragon Ability Hall and the flame symbol on the roof, surrounded by tall buildings and greenery. Yuan confirmed his agreement, standing in front of a man with red hair and a group of shadowy figures on either side. A man with a red beard and long hair looks serious as a metal hand touches his forearm. Yuan stands with his head down and his hands in his pockets, lost in thought. The image shows a man with an eye patch talking about the death of the entire Wang family during the ghost marriage incident. One turned away with restraint, and 2 men in red jackets watched him from behind with smiles. Yuan, sitting, confidently declared that then the matter would be considered settled. Yuan looks away thoughtfully while saying something important. A man with an eye patch smiles evilly, radiating menace against a purple light. Yuan shows off the glowing bracelet on his wrist and smiles with confidence. Three men in identical clothes discuss with surprise that someone is actually pre-awakened. The man threatens that since he entered his territory, he can kill him and replace him with someone else. Before the throne, in a fiery glow, stands a man who says that one cannot be seen before truly awakened one. Yuan declares that all struggles and intrigues are pointless, facing two opponents on the light floor. Yuan stands in a softly lit room, looking forward with confidence, as if ready for the upcoming event. He rises in a fiery flame, and three men in identical clothes and one with white hair watch him. Yuan and he discuss the situation with concern, expressing confusion and worry about what is happening around them. Yuan floats in a fiery flame above the altar, surrounded by ice walls with frozen figures on either side. Yuan, surrounded by flames, stands in front of the man against a backdrop of ice formations, ready to support him in battle. She stands with a sword and says, "Little brother." Ning Xuan, with his eyes closed, calmly asks if he wants to kill the old man, while the two men in the dark surroundings express tension. A man with fire in his hand resolutely says that even if his soul and blood burn, he will continue to fight. Yuan warns that not only will failure lead to punishment, but the messengers of doomsday will execute those who violate the great test. A man with a red beard asks doubtfully if his interlocutor is sure that he will pass the great test tour. Yuan stands with his hands in his pockets, watching a blue-haired girl cross her arms and look away in a snowy, icy setting. Wen and two other men were frozen in ice, and he said the cold effect would wear off in 30 seconds. She stands in profile, blindfolded, lost in thought or anticipation, against a light sky. Yuan said he returned at the request to protect his interlocutor one day. Yuan stands in the room and says something with a serious expression on his face. Wen stands next to a girl with blue hair and a blindfold who talks about her strength. She stands with her back to him, covering her eyes with a blindfold, and suddenly notices something. She stands there blindfolded and someone says, "All right," and holds a piece of paper towards her. He looks at a girl with blue hair and a blindfold who puts her hand on her chest as if she's about to say something. Wen looks ahead with concentration and assures that there is no need to worry. Yuan is standing at an intersection when a car with its headlights on suddenly approaches him. She walks past a black car, preparing for something important. Yuan smiles and touches his temple, as if thinking about something important. The image shows a woman in uniform with a serious expression on her face, raising her hand slightly as if she's about to say something. Wen said the supervisor position suited him perfectly, looking at his interlocutor under the clear sky. Yuan approached the black limousine, and the woman informed him that he was assigned to watch over the black prison, addressing him as master. In the underground auction hall, many people are watching the scene where a girl with long purple hair is heading, and he is standing behind her. Yuan approaches the group where a woman in a purple dress with a glass says that she didn't spend the money, and her father. He ponders where Black Prison could have gotten the new idea from, looking at the glowing crystal and decorations in space. Against the backdrop of space, they discuss how the new warden is a business genius who profits from prisoners and makes life easier for those who get involved with her. Yuan looks away with a smile, while another man, with his hand raised as if inviting, addresses him. She kneels in the VIP room, hands over the documents and asks the owner to check them for the auction. Yuan sits on the sofa with a folder in his hands, looking thoughtfully at the woman in white standing in front of him, who is knelt down. A woman in uniform, with a serious expression, begins to say that she will destroy everyone. Yuan, sitting on the sofa, said he liked fair competition and wanted to participate in the auction as a regular participant. She stands on stage with a microphone and says that this is a forbidden land of law and order. A woman in uniform stands on stage and addresses an audience seated in stepped rows of a large hall. Three people are discussing something serious. A man in yellow is pointing his finger, another is gesturing indignantly, and a girl with purple hair is speaking with a determined expression on her face. A woman in uniform announces a guest by pointing to a figure hidden under a red veil next to a man in a suit. Yuan sits tied up in a wheelchair as another man with glasses and a red cape appears behind him. In the hall with the stands, people are whispering, expressing bewilderment about the first lot, an old man who, in their opinion, is of no interest to anyone. Yuan begins to introduce himself, explaining that this is Dr. Mark, a death row inmate scheduled to be executed by electric chair at dawn. The host with the microphone energetically addresses the silent Yuan, who looks depressed and distant. A man in a suit explains that a cannibalistic serial killer is valuable because of his impeccable surgical reputation in a world where everyone fears for their lives. Yuan listens as several men compete to bid for the operation, offering millions, while an elderly man in a wheelchair tries to stop them. A man with golden brown eyes and light gray hair holds a microphone and speaks with a smile, his gaze focused and confident. Several people with different facial expressions are surprised and alarmed. One of them probably said something shocking. "Tied up in wheelchair," man exclaims, $50 million price tag is too high. The man, with a serious expression, introduces himself as the head of the Huo family, one of the 10 great families in the fortress. A woman named Shu Bing sits on a couch and holds a sign with the number 026, introducing himself as the CEO of Shining Era Medical Group. The man with the number 077 raises the sign and rejoices, and another participant increases the bet to 58 million, after which a cry is heard for 60 million. Wan looks forward with concentration, placing his hands on the surface, showing determination and tension. She looks in the mirror and expresses dissatisfaction, saying that she cannot afford to look like this. Wan slammed the floor hard, causing a loud sound and a crack. The man with the cane threatens, doubling the bet to 170 million and saying that he will spend the money on his son's funeral if anyone interferes with him. She listens with concern as the two discuss a big win at the Black Prison, where a prisoner has brought in almost 200 million without spending anything. A man with a microphone speaks energetically, expressing his thoughts with enthusiasm and gesturing with his hand. The image shows a glowing blue heart with a description of it as that of an ice-type superhuman with perfect body compatibility and level 3 abilities. A woman with hypnotic powers is introduced as a prisoner with a 3-year sentence, a specialist in the insomnia of the rich. On the edge of a cliff stands a tall modern house with a helicopter on the platform, surrounded by a deep canyon and bright daylight. Yuan is demanding all the lots at the auction for a total of 30 million, raising the bid among other participants. He sits on the couch and she stands next to him in uniform. He says that her choice and business sense are real gifts. She is wearing a uniform with a cap, slightly embarrassed, and puts her hand on her chest, expressing tender feelings. A vicious creature with spider-like limbs and glowing eyes suddenly appears in front of the woman in uniform, causing her to feel scared and tense. The image shows a woman in uniform with a serious expression and a drop of sweat on her cheek as she listens intently or thinks. Yuan leans thoughtfully on his arm as he sits on a chair with his eyes closed in a quiet room. Yuan stands with his back to a man with a beard and dark glasses against a background of red light and sparks. He holds a saw, syringe, and knives in his hands with a smirk, warning that the doctor will be the source of future problems, and the Hu family enters the game set by the Lord of the Vortex. The image shows a bald man in a robe with beads, surrounded by red light, sitting in a cross-legged pose with a pensive expression on his face. A group of men in identical pants perform fighting stances on the street as the opening bid of 50 million is announced in the air. The image shows purple eggs tied with red roots, with a note that they can cause some monsters to evolve. Yuan smiles as he holds the chin of the silver-haired man, who introduces himself as Zhao Yuan, an awakened disciple with lightning-like ability. Two characters are having a tense discussion about a situation, both looking worried and sweating. Yuan sits relaxed and she puts her hand on his shoulder with a smile, expressing interest and closeness. Yuan stands with his arms crossed by the window and says that he was waiting for his interlocutor. West Industrial Area shown Abyss Plaza 6 months ago with factories, smoking chimneys, and a deserted area with no visible characters. A group of students at the Thunder Test Dojo kneels in front of the targets, preparing for training. 3 men in identical uniforms are kneeling, one of them saying something with a determined expression, while Yuan looks down, lost in thought. The man with short dark hair and the other with red hair look anxious and tense, as if something has really scared or surprised them. Yuan floats in the air, surrounded by smoke, while 3 men on the ground look at him with respect and attention. He warns you not to speak or your tongue will be cut out, and then apologizes for oversleeping. 2 men stare ahead tensely, one speaking with concern and the other silently focused. Yuan expresses confidence and joy with a smile and a hand gesture when addressing his interlocutor. He looks with tension and fatigue, his eyes expressing a deep internal struggle. Yuan hit the wooden pole, making a loud sound, and started talking about elder sister Ning. He looks away with a grin, his gaze filled with confidence and hidden intention. He causes a powerful energy explosion and threatens anyone who dares to oppose him. Several men in uniform with frightened faces watch the collapsing field, where bodies and body parts of other people are sinking into the ground. Wen confidently stated that no one in this world can compete with him in anything. Yuan stands on stage in a large hall with several spectators scattered on sofas. He sits with a confident smile, and she gently places her hand on his knee, expressing support and closeness between them. The image shows a woman with red hair standing with her arms crossed, while a man with blue hair and a bandage on his forehead holds an object and introduces himself as curator Liang Jin from the museum. Yuan names the figure of 100 million, saying it with confidence. Yuan sits on the couch with a confident smile, next to a woman in a pink dress who looks at him with a serious expression. The woman was surprised that the amount would exceed 100 million, and the man noted that the Zhao family is indeed very rich. She is adamant that she will agree to 110 million. Wen says something with a slight smile in a warm atmosphere, standing against the backdrop of blurry interiors. Wen says with a smile that he has checked Xu Bing's budget and is ready to discuss the details. She and he look anxious and tense, as if faced with unexpected or disturbing news. Yuan sits relaxed, and she with pink hair gently touches his chest, smiling and showing interest in him. In the foreground sits a confident woman with red hair, while in the background a man clutches his head in confusion. The woman announces that the bidding is not over because a VIP from the private room has placed a bid. Wen and the girl are sitting on the couch, and 3 men around them turn around in surprise. The image shows a screen with the inscription VIP and the amount $201 million, emphasizing a high status or a large amount. The screen shows in close-up the words VIP and the amount 221 million $800,000. Yuan asks the organizers with a serious expression if they are going to do anything. A woman in uniform with a microphone speaks confidently, explaining something to the audience, emphasizing her words with a gesture. Wen, with a tense expression, says something with determination and anger. He names amounts starting from 250 million and gradually increasing to 271 million. Wen sees the number 301 million on the screen, signifying a large sum or achievement. Yuan and another man in tuxedos look worried as they watch the scene unfold, while several other people sit in the background. A man with white hair and purple eyes asked with a grin who the other person was. On the screen in the VIP area, asking who dares to demand respect from the speaker. Wen sees the words VIP and an exclamation mark, expressing the surprise or importance of the moment. He radiates energy with force and warns of the consequences of insulting the awakened one. Yuan stands in front of soldiers with guns surrounding him, and next to him sits a frightened girl in a pink dress. He looks at her carefully, holding a microphone in his hand, and prepares to say something. Yuan said the figure of 300 million, with a tense expression on his face. Yuan sits on the couch, folds his hands thoughtfully, and says that the trap has started to work. A man in a suit says that 500 million is a big sum even for the Zhao family, while others sit on the sofas in the hall. The blue-haired man says with surprise that no one can compare to him now. The image shows a malevolent man with purple eyes and blonde hair, smiling maliciously, expressing confidence and determination. Wen touches his face thoughtfully, smiling with a hint of self-confidence. He stands on the stage with a microphone, and 2 men in the audience discuss whether the blood of the Arhat is worth such a huge sum and call the VIP crazier than Zhao Yuan. One angrily orders the weakling to get off the table in the VIP area. He gets angry and yells at someone, calling him a scoundrel. He cursed with fury on his face, calling someone a scoundrel. Yuan sits adjusting his glasses while another silver-haired man angrily clenches his fist and expresses displeasure. The green-haired man introduced himself as the middleman Wei Xing and said that he handled loans for the 10 largest shadow organizations, offering loans against collateral. The image shows a man with purple hair and an earring looking forward with a serious expression against a bright light. Yuan explains that the family's available funds are only 600 million, despite their huge total assets. The spotlight is on the announcement of a second bid of 800 million. On stage, one woman with a microphone greets the audience, while another holds a tray with a red object waiting for further action. Wen looks at the man with glasses who says that you just need to sign here and the money will be transferred immediately. Yuan holds a piece of paper and points to it while talking to another man in a purple suit. Yuan looks worried and tense, a bead of sweat appears on his face. He signs the certificate with irritation, as another man holds it in front of him with a serious expression. The man with glasses orders to mobilize resources to finish the job in one blow, while Yuan looks tense and worried. Yuan stands in a dark collar, partially revealing his chest, with the silhouette of another person visible nearby. The man with purple eyes and blue hair suddenly raised his finger and spoke with determination. Yuan, surprised by huge wealth of Zhao family, which actually owns 1.2 billion worth of mines. 4 people in the room look shocked and tense. One of them, standing in front, expresses indignation. Yuan said something with a smile, holding a card with the inscription VIP in his hand. V appeared on the screen in the amount of 1.6 billion, which makes a strong impression on him. He and other characters react to the unexpected event with surprise and alarm, expressing shock and tension. Yuan calmly reads the documents while another purple-haired man angrily says that he needs to use the remaining 6 minutes. He asks in surprise if he really can't use more than 1.2 billion. Yuan screams furiously and clenches his fist, expressing strong emotions. The man adjusts his glasses and looks thoughtfully, holding a folder with documents in his other hand. Yuan writes tensely on his tablet, expressing anger and determination. Man exclaims that Zhao family paid a huge price for the marriage alliance, expressing shock and bewilderment. Yuan raised his fist and declared that no one could compete with him and no one ever would. She is wearing a uniform with a microphone and speaks confidently on stage. Yuan carefully places the sealed envelope into the wooden box, performing his action with concentration. He expresses displeasure with fury in his voice. His eyes are full of anger and determination. He stands by the window, and she, kneeling, addresses him with important words. Yuan holds a red object and looks at a helicopter, preparing to take off against a clear sky. Yuan listens to a man in a formal suit who says that all the contracts have already been signed by him. A man watches in horror as a dark, sinister shadow with claws reaches out to a lifeless body on the tracks in a gloomy tunnel. The woman in uniform asked what they would do next. Yuan turned with a slight smile and began to speak, creating an atmosphere of calm and confidence. Loud bangs can be heard on the roof of the building, echoing through the streets between the houses. Yuan woke up in bed and looked around in surprise. Yuan looks in horror at the man who bursts in with a knife in his hand and screams. He angrily says that his sister is talented and he is lazy, clutching the edge of the bed. Yuan, standing in the doorway, greets the girl, who lifts her leg saying, "Good morning." She waves her hand and says, "Bye, bye," as she leaves the room. Yuan looks in surprise at the crying man with a shovel who expresses strong emotions. Yuan looks worried and sweats while looking away against a blue dotted pattern. The man takes money out of his wallet with a disgruntled look and says that the interlocutor is useless. Yuan says that breakfast downstairs will be closing soon and waves a bill as a farewell. He warns that the world is dangerous and advises to run at the slightest threat, while he himself quickly runs down the corridor. Yuan runs forward with concentration, thinking about the upcoming event. He stands at the counter, where the owner with a mustache laughs cheerfully, talking to him. He smiles as he lists what he has, including dough sticks and soy milk. Yuan handed the apron-wearing man a baguette in a small bag, watching his reaction carefully. Woman with curly hair leans thoughtfully on her hand, smiling and squinting against bookshelves. Yuan smiles and waves as a woman says he has to help his sister with the store after school, and a man jokes about getting married soon. Yuan smiled thoughtfully and lightly touched his head with his hand, expressing slight surprise. The image shows a man with a mustache saying something with an expression of concern. Yuan makes a sharp turn on a narrow street, sending up plumes of smoke and drawing attention to himself. A man with a cigarette loudly calls out to his neighbors, and Yuan grins and says that their boss is back. 3 people look worried and tense. The man in blue tries to say something, expressing displeasure. A man with a cigarette in his mouth announces the introduction of a street tax while several people stand around him and listen. The man with the mustache excitedly talks about the fee 3 times, while 3 passers-by behind him watch him with surprise and alarm. 3 people in a panic ask Biao, Ji to help them survive, expressing despair and fear. A man with a cigarette in his mouth expresses indifference, saying that he doesn't care. The man threatens to destroy the shops and beat everyone inside if his demands are not met, while Yuan stands behind with his hands clasped. Yuan stands in front, and 4 people behind him tensely prepare for action. A group of men approach the protagonist in a threatening manner, who confidently clasps his hands in preparation for a confrontation. Yuan stands in front of a group of people, one man in an apron trying to defend himself, while the rest look anxious and tense. Yuan runs down the street with his hand raised as if trying to get someone's attention. Yuan, a little embarrassed, leaned over and admitted that he'd forgotten to pay. A man in horror and sweat, with a cigarette stuck in his cheek, expresses great fear. Yuan stands with clenched fists in front of a man and a woman who beg him not to touch the honest boy and ask him to leave. He says with a tense expression that the protection fee must also be paid. Yuan violently hit the man, shouting if he doesn't understand what it means to live. He watches as a group of people fall to their knees and bow before him on the street between the buildings. He asks in bewilderment what is happening. The red-haired man apologizes to his boss, explaining that he had just gotten out of prison and didn't know it was his territory. 3 people are shocked. One of them says in surprise that an honest child is a mafia boss. He is worried that his reputation has been damaged and does not know how to look his neighbors in the eye now. Yuan stands still as the red-haired man leans over menacingly and says he's going to cut something off of him. 3 people look at something out of frame with surprise and fear, expressing shock and tension. One points at himself, trying to hide something against the backdrop of an ominous red shadow with glowing eyes. Yuan screams in horror, expressing intense shock and fear. A man with red hair scoffs at how an ordinary student can be the prince of the underground, while 2 frightened men behind him watch. Yuan asked everyone to leave and not scare the neighbors, to which the other man sheepishly agreed. 4 people are standing on the street. One of them asks in confusion, "What is happening right now?" The man laughs awkwardly, saying he will never become a gang leader, while the woman listens to him doubtfully, crossing her arms. He hides around the corner and warily watches a group of people, among whom he hears the name He Shenggang. Yuan stands in the alleyway with a disgruntled look, while the red-haired man and his companions look tense and try to explain something. Yuan asks with displeasure who told him to address him as Master. A man begs for forgiveness and asks to be punished, admitting that he deserves to die 1,000 times, while others bow down nearby. Yuan stands in a dark alley and reminds that his new mission is to protect his family and neighbors. He stands with his back to him, sweating and staring intently at something in front of him in the darkness. Several people vowed to protect Yangshun Street, bowing before Yuan, who stands in front with a serious expression. Several people cross the road at a crosswalk in front of Jiawa Academy. Yuan runs quickly down the street as a worker in an orange suit calls out to him, trying to get his attention. A man in an orange suit says with a smile that the academy is short of temporary cleaners. Yuan said he would come after school and enthusiastically moved forward. The man in the orange uniform smiles and says the pay is pretty good. A man in an orange suit with a broom asks in surprise where Xiao Yuan has disappeared to, looking at the approaching car. Yuan sits with his arms crossed and a serious expression on his face, listening attentively to his interlocutor. Yuan sits behind the wheel of the car and smiles, looking ahead. Yuan raises a finger confidently, while the other man happily adjusts his tie, beaming with pride. A man with glasses and blonde hair looks worried and says something with concern. Yuan gets out of the car, saying he's going to do his own thing. Yuan stands at the door of the faculty office, listening to someone's voice from behind the door. Yuan entered the room with a smile and spoke pleasantly. She smiles cheerfully and covers her mouth with her hand while in the office room. Yuan smiles, and she tries to move away in surprise, explaining that everything is fine and nothing to worry about. She says with a smile that he is no longer her honest child. Yuan asks in surprise why the other person is suddenly leaving. Yuan explains that this caused her to offend the director while he was working on his laptop in the office. Yuan expresses dissatisfaction and speaks with a serious expression. She says there's no point in listening to nonsense. The teacher's just moving to a new environment while he's looking at another man with a cup. 2 men discuss how the real power holder is another man, supported by the entire school administration. Yuan firmly orders to change the decision and just kick him out. Yuan wakes up to hear his older sister getting angry and telling him to hurry up. Yuan looks at the blonde man in surprise as he displays a magical fireball, and he clenches his fists in tension. 2 people are walking up the stairs. One is telling something, and the other is listening with his hands in his pockets. The image shows a large building with several floors and flying containers around it, with no visible characters. She stands on a box and warns that the Void Awakening test is extremely dangerous, while a group of people listen to her in a large room. Mu Rongying threatens that he will die sooner or later without a burial place. She squints, expressing distrust or doubt. Yuan stands between 2 men in identical uniforms and looks surprised. Yuan stepped on the floor with a loud thud. The woman says, "This hell is no place for those who survive on flattery," addressing a man named Yuan. Yuan smiles and says he knows how to take care of himself. She waves her hand away in irritation, while Yuan holds up a device with a red button, explaining something important. The woman with red hair says it's time to go, and Yuan stands behind with a walkie-talkie in his hand, listening to her. Yuan walks forward confidently with a book in his hand, followed by several men in formal suits. Yuan and 3 others discuss how he did not become a vice minister as an unawakened person who set all records. Yuan carefully writes down information from a tablet handed to him by another man in an industrial space. She crossed her arms with a smug smile, while Yuan looked embarrassed with a drop of sweat on his face. The man explains something, and she listens in surprise, crossing her arms and raising her eyebrows. She smiles nervously and sweats, clearly feeling embarrassed or awkward. 3 men in uniform with the emblem are alarmed. One shouts that if she loses her documents, she will be immediately disqualified, and then they will lose too. She asks with tears in her eyes to explain to her master, otherwise she will be severely punished. One stands with a book, and she with pink hair looks at the man in the shadows in surprise, asking him to act immediately. He looks forward thoughtfully and begins to speak, expressing his thoughts out loud. Yuan stands with his hand in his pocket, watching the events around him. The pink-haired girl angrily says that if exceptions worked, everyone would be a god, and Yuan listens to her silently. He stands in front of the door number 101 and gestures for you to enter. She is in shock, and the 2 faceless ones behind her are also surprised by what is happening. Yuan scratched his head in embarrassment, and she looked at him with surprise and alarm. Yuan nervously holds the folder and says that the situation is more complicated than it seemed. 3 men in identical uniforms are walking and talking, and a girl with pink hair looks upset and confused. She falls down with a cry of "Ah-H," expressing fear and surprise. Wen manages to grab the red-haired woman, warning her of the danger. She angrily states that he was just lucky and shouldn't expect gratitude from her. Wan and 2 other men watch as the red-haired woman walks away in annoyance, steam coming out of her ears. Yuan explains to the group that the data is classified and they will only learn the details once they go down. The image shows several platforms with red lights that rise or fall on vertical cables in a narrow space between the walls. The 3 young men wearily express relief at their arrival, one of them reporting that little brother Lin is sleeping in the corner again. She told him not to disturb him, because if he overslept, the elevator would take him back to the surface, which would make her job easier. Yuan sits in a room with a tech interior and looks thoughtful, not saying a word. She warns that one mistake will lead to eternal death, and he thoughtfully chews something, standing in the distance. In the arena, many participants begin the first stage of the Awakening exam, which is a survival game. Yuan says if contestants remain alive for 48 hours, they will advance to the second round. Yan stands among the crowd, observing a group of people with different facial expressions and postures, creating a tense atmosphere before an unknown event. The man on the left points and speaks, and the man in the center listens, while Yuan on the right covers his mouth with his hand and smiles. The map shows zones with different survival points and explains that the top 100 participants will receive generous rewards in the first round. Yuan stands thoughtfully with his arms crossed, pondering his options with the 5 serums. He looks at the girl with long pink hair walking away, paying attention to her back and movement. She states with a serious expression that she will not tolerate such behavior. Yuan warns that the situation is too dangerous, and the others listen to his words with concern. The image shows a confident woman with pink hair, standing with her hand on her hip and looking forward with a slight smile. Yuan confidently gives a thumbs up and says he understands. The man smiles and raises his hand in greeting, expressing friendliness and goodwill. Yuan warns not to fall into the depths of the abyss, and the others agree to join him. The man says a larger group is safer early on, and she stands there doubtfully, arms crossed. He looks away thoughtfully and begins to speak, but his words are not visible in the image. Yuan says that after crossing the black sand area, everyone will be in the blue zone, addressing a large group of people. The image shows a man with light stubble, smiling and looking away, giving the impression of confidence and calm. Wan looks away in surprise. Next to him stands a girl with pink hair who also pays attention to something out of frame. She furiously explains that she is simply protecting him, while Yuan laughs nearby. The man laughs and spreads his arms, expressing joy or relief. She claps her hands happily, while 2 men behind her watch in surprise. The image shows a man in blue raising his hand and saying he can't do something. Yuan fights by releasing a powerful beam of light that cuts off the opponent's head in a dynamic combat sequence. 3 people look in horror at a falling head with black smoke escaping from it. The image shows a green-eyed demon holding a severed head, emitting an ominous aura in the darkness. The man panics and explains that they are facing a bounty hunter monster, invulnerable to weapons and deadly when it captures a target. Yuan holds a severed head while a woman in a red dress is shocked by what she sees. 2 men panic and discuss how she can't move and ask who will pull her away. The image shows a creature with a long glowing tail attacking rapidly, creating the effect of speed and strength. She looks in tears and fear at something that suddenly appears or happens in front of her. Against a backdrop of mountains, a girl in red watches as an energy sword with a purple glow cuts through a giant snake-like enemy. A group of people notice that someone has saved a girl and try to figure out who it was by watching the disappearing creature. Yuan stretches his hand forward in concentration, surrounded by blue flames preparing to use his power. Wan stands with a shining map in his hand, and the 2 men discuss in amazement that he cut through the body of a bounty hunter as hard as alloy. She looks anxious and tense, as if she is trying to urgently explain or warn something. An unknown creature makes a piercing scream against a background of red vertical lines and bright light. Wen looks away thoughtfully, lost in his thoughts. The woman laughs and teases Yuan by pinching him, and he walks forward, ignoring her actions. 3 men discuss how one of them threw almost 100 cards and one accidentally hit a vulnerable spot. He tries to explain something, and she thoughtfully raises her finger to her lips, thinking out loud. Yuan raises his hand thoughtfully to his face, as if about to say something or consider an important decision. He looks anxiously at the silhouettes of enemies on the top of the cliff, sensing an impending threat. Wen and the other man look at something in front of them in shock and fear. He watches from a high place as an army of creatures approaches, preparing for battle on the plain. She reports that they have come across a huge herd of hunting monsters, and he wonders how this is possible if they are still in the green zone. He exclaims in horror, expressing intense fear and shock. Yuan is determined that their only option is to break through and gather strength to fight their way through the enemies surrounding him on the rocky terrain. She summons a giant sword surrounded by glowing streams of energy, preparing for battle. Several people in identical uniforms with weapons in their hands quickly run forward, preparing to attack. The image shows a pink-haired girl delivering a powerful blow with her sword, repelling the attack of 2 clawed monsters. He called for everyone to follow her as she created a passage, and the other prepared to attack, delivering a powerful blow. Against the backdrop of a night landscape, a group of figures with weapons rush into battle, accompanied by the sounds of battle and shouts. She rushes towards the monsters surrounding her with a sword in her hand, preparing for battle. Someone asks if Yuan is okay, while legs are seen moving in the foreground and silhouettes with weapons are seen in the background. He panics and reports that his younger brother Lin has disappeared, while another one with a sword confirms his words with alarm. She furiously asks how he could not protect Ling Yuan, who was in the center of their group and suddenly disappeared. He reveals that he heard about a mutated bounty hunter who can turn invisible and may have captured Lin's younger brother. A young man with a wound on his face and sweating holds a sword, looking back with caution. Yuan stands in a dark room, holding glowing cards with mysterious symbols in his hand. The image shows a sinister creature with a long tail and sharp weapons standing in a dark gorge between rocks. Yuan is surrounded by purple flames and floating cards, urging his opponent to give in and get caught. The image shows a creature with glowing eyes and an open mouth, emitting a shrill cry of K-I-A-A-K-K. Yuan resolutely told the enemy not to retreat and continue to attack. An ominous dragon with glowing eyes appears in the sky, emitting a piercing cry. Yuan stands calmly when he is suddenly attacked by a furious blue creature with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. Yuan releases a powerful purple energy beam from his eye, directed forward. The image shows a demon with sharp claws and swords surrounded by purple energy, controlling the flying rocks around him. Yuan stands surrounded by a purple aura and floating rocks, while the being in the energy field expresses struggle and madness. He stands surrounded by purple light and chains. A card appears in front of him with an image of a demonic woman that increases psychic energy. He releases a powerful energy blast towards the demonic creature standing in front of him. Yuan completed the mysterious device, surrounded by glowing purple threads, and declared it complete. He stepped sharply on the ground, causing a thumping sound and attracting attention. Yuan and the other dark-cloaked group members discuss the sudden departure of one of their own, expressing surprise and tension. He notices that all 5 of the top awakened are here, and realizes that the situation has become serious as he watches them from behind a rock. Yuan insists that the subject cannot hide and is definitely nearby, standing with 2 other men on the edge of the cliff. He hid behind a rock and thought that he could no longer remain unnoticed. He ordered everyone to split up and begin a thorough search of the rocky forest ahead, assuring them that the target would not escape. Yuan listens intently without saying a word in a dark, stone-walled room. Yuan and other figures in long cloaks hover in a misty space, creating an atmosphere of mystery and tension. The image shows a man with red eyes and a serious expression, looking ahead intently without saying a word. Yuan and 2 other men in long cloaks with symbols on their backs float in the clouds, preparing for the upcoming event. Yuan looks forward thoughtfully, not saying a word. He appears in the dark with a red background, and says that the one who does not understand the situation is the interlocutor. The 3 in black robes with a red symbol express shock and discuss the impossibility of quickly removing the seal, surprised that it took less time than expected. Yuan raised his hand and looked forward with confidence, showing determination and readiness for action. He states that now they can only unite to kill the little thief while energy clots fly around him. He releases powerful energy from his open hand, surrounded by a glowing aura. Yuan uses a psychic ability to disintegrate his body into cubic pieces surrounded by red light. He is surrounded by red cubes that begin to consume his body, creating a sense of danger and tension. The image shows a man wearing a metal mask who appears scared and tense. Yuan says that the interlocutor is happy to stay alive and must answer a few questions, promising to spare him if he behaves well. A man with red hair falls down quickly, clenching his fists and showing tension on his face. He asks with a tense expression why he feels like he is moving slower. Yuan holds a black card in his hand and smiles slightly as he shows it to someone. The bladed monster screams "Die" and attacks with a piercing scream. Yuan warns that there is an invisible mutated monster in front of them, while a creature with horns and a weapon attacks him. Yuan congratulates his interlocutor on finding what he was looking for. Yuan delivers a powerful blow, sending the opponent flying, who asks in amazement how this is possible. Yuan watches as a demon holds the head and body of a man in his hands, dragging him along the ground. He lies on the ground. Several purple tentacles emerge from his back and engulf his body. Yuan suggests returning to the team for now. Yuan said that if he hadn't turned back and found her with the monster, she would have died without a grave, holding her in his arms in a narrow gorge. He smiles and puts his hand behind his head in a relaxed manner, radiating confidence and calm. She insistently demands to get rid of the monster quickly, while he smiles shyly, holding her in his arms. Yuan and the other men run, and one of them, crying, reflects on how his older sister saved him from the monsters because of hypoglycemia and wonders about their relationship. He saves the girl with red hair by carrying her into the air while another man runs after them. Yuan told his older sister that his hypoglycemia had passed and he could now walk on his own, so she could let him go. She warns that something is behind them. 2 men panic when a dark, ominous shadow suddenly appears, threatening them from above. Yuan fights the enemy in the air as 3 men in blue clothes run towards them, expressing determination. Yuan said to himself with a serious expression that this was a disaster. Yuan carries a girl in his arms as he runs away from a group of pursuers who are rapidly running after them. Yuan in the hands of a girl with pink hair, while 2 men behind them look shocked. Yuan stands with 2 other figures on top of a cliff, watching the glowing sky through dark purple shadows. Yuan, the head disciple of the Black Gold Hall, stands in front, followed by 2 attendants, one of whom holds a glowing artifact. The woman in the red jacket exclaimed, "Cousin!" and the 2 men behind her looked surprised and alarmed. He holds a glowing blue lantern surrounded by a mystical glow in the dark atmosphere. She speaks with anxiety, expressing concern and tension in her voice. Yuan looks forward with a serious expression and seems to be preparing to say something. She stands in front of 3 people in dark clothes, one of whom is holding a glowing blue ball, and watches them in a narrow, icy gorge. Yuan listens intently as he and 2 others discuss the situation that is causing the girl concern. Yuan raises his hand in concentration, blue fire emitting between his fingers as he prepares for action. Yuan silently looks forward, and next to him hangs a black bird figurine, expressing silence. She states that she has a duty to protect her younger brothers on the expedition into the abyss, and he listens to her with a serious expression on his face. He asks about the Murong family with a serious expression. Wen and another man anxiously discuss the unexpected situation, both looking worried and tense. She says with determination that she must protect him, showing strong emotions and tension. The image shows a woman with short blonde hair holding a glowing blue artifact in her hand in a dark atmosphere. A man with long dark hair and a glowing eye orders immediate family punishment. A man with long blue hair and a serious expression looks away as if he heard or noticed something. Yuan watches in alarm as a man with disheveled blonde hair screams in horror as he is grabbed from behind. Yuan demands that the villain show himself to him, surrounded by a glowing energy field. In front of the glowing blue lantern, an ominous demonic silhouette with sharp teeth and horns appears, surrounded by rain and darkness. He stands with his back to the viewer, reaching out his hand to a glowing stone on a cliff in a foggy atmosphere. Two young men in uniform with the emblem are shocked to discuss how a monster can move in an abnormal disaster. The image shows a man with blue hair looking forward with a sly smile and a tense expression on his face. Yuan stands with one hand in his pocket and the other making a raised finger gesture, as if explaining or emphasizing an important point. Wen jumps off a cliff using a long tail with a pendant that hits the rock below. Two men fly forward rapidly, preparing to attack or collide. Yuan reflects on how he summoned multiple monsters, but only this one can appear inside the disaster, and wonders why the Black Gold Hall wants him so much. Two men in uniform discuss the receding disaster while a woman in a red jacket stands nearby. He points to a holographic list and says that if they're lucky, they might get a high rating. Yuan stands with his back turned, watching the red-haired girl who looks upset and clenches her fists. She gets angry and says something with irritation, and Yuan listens attentively, keeping his hands in his pockets. She says with tears in her eyes that no matter how hard she tries and proves her worth, it doesn't change the situation. Wen began to speak thoughtfully, uttering the word, if. Wen notices the cursed monster circling around him and wonders what it is trying to do. The image shows a huge dark monster with red eyes slamming the ground hard, causing a thud. He, with long blue hair, turned around abruptly when he heard a loud thud next to him. The image shows a man with blue hair and blue eyes looking forward with a determined expression on his face. Wen shouts that something is wrong and orders the other man to stop, who reacts harshly to his words. Two muscular men in helmets are on the rocks. One leans on a stone, making a sound of impact. He clenches his fists and has a stern expression as he asks if there is something wrong with the mutated monster. The image shows a sinister creature with horns and glowing eyes making an eerie sound. G. Yuan delivers a powerful blow, accompanied by the words, blood dragon, while another man reacts with fear to the attack. Yuan activates blood magic and promises to send the enemy along with the guardian of the abyss. Yuan watches as a vortex of red and purple energies appears in front of him, surrounded by thick fog. Wen looks away thoughtfully and begins to speak, expressing his thoughts out loud. She looks at the man and says something with a serious expression on her face, and he smiles, leaning towards her. The image shows mystical birds flying in the sky with a green glow around them. In a cave, a group of people are surrounded by birds preparing to attack. A young man with a sword calls on everyone to hold on tight while his two comrades stand nearby in tension. Wen, holding a gun, speaks to another man against a backdrop of dead bodies and giant crows surrounded by mountains. Wen sits on the ground after falling while another man says someone refused to enter the red zone with his sister and ran back to the blue zone. Yuan smiles as he points to the device on his wrist, and the other man reacts with surprise. Wen looks at the ranking list, where he sees that the top 300 only includes members from Thunderclap Hall. He looks at the holographic screen in surprise, and the man standing behind it joyfully clenches his fists in anticipation. Wen rushes forward, cursing the situation as dark shapes and smoke rise behind him. Yuan says everyone in the top 20 is a true elite, and the other person listens in surprise. Yuan takes a close look at the rankings, where he is ranked 9th among the strongest in the Thunderclap Hall. Three men in a state of shock cannot believe what is happening. One of them exclaims that this is impossible. A man in a blue uniform anxiously asks if someone has entered the black zone. The man is shocked and doesn't believe that someone could end up in the black zone because he didn't even dare to stay in the blue one, while another tries to explain with an awkward smile. She sits on a huge dead creature with a sword. A blue holographic screen glows in the sky. He stands against a backdrop of rocks, looking at a glowing blue holographic screen with his fist clenched. In the observation hall, they discuss that Yuan, who ranked 9th, is not bound by a contract, and any hall can offer him conditions in the awakening exam. Yuewuji, the head of the Boundless Hall, stands with his arms crossed and a serious expression on his face. He is the head of Thunderclap Hall, in anger, slams his fist on the table expressing strong displeasure. The woman with red hair and orange glasses is introduced as Xing Yun, the head of the Nine Heavens with a special rank. He sits in a chair and thoughtfully touches his lips, introducing himself as the head of the Penglai Hall with a special rank. Yuan explains that each hall receives 3 contracts before the awakening exam, and one of them is currently in the draft pool. The man with the beard looks worried and starts talking, showing concern. She laughs, crossing her arms and looking contented in the bright room. 2 men are discussing an important issue at the table. One of them looks surprised, while the other is serious and focused. Yuan looks ahead with concentration, clearly considering the difficult situation. A man panics and reports problems in their gym, expressing intense anxiety and tension. Wen stands on a huge fallen creature and says the name of the place out loud, Black Zone, while 2 monsters watch nearby. He stares at the holographic screen, which suddenly starts to sound like a ding-ding. She smiles and makes a peace sign, saying she will send her location and asks him to come quickly. Wen noted that they were very close to each other, and she replied that she was in the most dangerous part of the yellow zone and asked if he often used this trick to deceive girls. The man sternly told her to stop chatting and hurry up as the woman followed him into the cave. Wen retreats in fear, surrounded by dark creatures, while a girl with long blonde hair watches what is happening. A woman in red looks at a wounded man screaming in pain as a dark, menacing figure appears nearby. Wen suddenly strikes, his hand shrouded in dark energy, creating a dynamic movement. She looks at the glowing device on her wrist with alarm and expresses fear. Wen flies into the air, emitting a blue light, and says that the warning came too late. Wen lands with a powerful explosion, surrounded by glowing energy and destruction all around. She is in shock and has a scared look on her face, sweating and opening her mouth as if she's about to say something. Yuan stands in front of 3 dark creatures surrounded by blue light, preparing for a possible attack. One concentrates on directing his hand, from which blue flames emerge, preparing to use his power. He watches as the dark creatures fall and break, and next to him stands a surprised girl in red. He stares intently at the glowing object in his hand as she approaches him with concern. Yuan smiles and touches his head with his hand, expressing slight awkwardness or thoughtfulness. Wen announces, Phase 1, ranking list, rank 7th among participants. He looks away, and she shyly touches her lips, trying to say something. She coquettishly offers to pay with her body, and Yuan turns away, raising his hand in response. She is surprised, and Yuan asks her what about herself. She said with a smile and a blush on her face that it was enough, and thanked him. Yuan sits on a rock in a desert area, watching a flying device with spinning propellers. He, holding the reward in his hands, offers to first increase the ability level from the 6th to the 9th rank. Yuan decided to use all 20 A-rank potions at once for a triple breakthrough. Yuan stands with his eyes closed. 3 glowing green silhouettes appear in front of him, like spirits or projections. He meditates while sitting on the edge of a cliff, holding the device in his hand, and a green aura of energy glows around him. Yuan looks ahead with concentration, contemplating awakening. He, sitting on the ground, watches the appearance of a demonic entity with 4 arms and horns, which is surrounded by a purple aura and displayed on a holographic map. She, leaning on a large sword, declares that in this life the fate of slavery cannot be changed. Yuan stands with his fist clenched, looking down with a determined expression against the backdrop of a gloomy sky. Yuan felt that someone was targeting him and noted it to himself. 2 people stand on the roof of a tall building. One looks at the city and the other watches him from behind. He noted that elder sister Ning, who never asks for help from others, personally asked him for help. She stands with her eyes closed and says that in 3 months she will find herself on the battlefield of the abyss. Wen runs along with the others, looking ahead with concentration. The pink-haired woman asks in surprise if someone was really a beautiful boy, and the blue-haired man replies that it's nonsense. She looks forward with a sly smile and a sparkling gaze, expressing confidence and determination. She stands menacingly in front of a frightened pink-haired girl with a glowing eye, who is clearly shocked and scared. She stands with her eyes closed, expressing calm and concentration. She stands on the balcony and looks down, lost in thought. Yuan stands in line with other young men in similar uniforms, preparing for something important. She stands at the railing and says that he is lucky to have retained his beauty. Yuan rushes forward, surrounded by powerful red and white energy, creating a vortex around him. Yuan watches as a bright red and white projectile hurtles through the blue sky. Yuan stands on the edge of a cliff looking into the distance, while the other two watch him from behind, immersed in silence. Zhu Lulu celebrates her 20th place, with Zhang standing next to her Jiahao, and Yue Qingwu watches from 17th place, all on rocky ground. Guming explains that having entered the Sky State Vale is probably looking for trouble for someone, and notes that this condition can instantly kill even awakened beings. She warns that her cousin is going to attack Ling Yuan with the Heavenly Veil Death Strike. She strongly believes that none of the top 10 can stand up to her cousin's true power and is determined to stop him. Yuan suddenly attacks, shouting that he has caught the enemy. Yuan looks forward with a slight smile, his golden brown eyes expressing confidence and calm. Yuan looks at the boy floating in the air among the bright red light and asks if he knows why he will die. He looks away thoughtfully, lost in his thoughts against the dark and mysterious lighting. Yuan asks with a serious expression if the younger sister is really his personal property. Yuan, with a bright red eye, looks forward and declares that it will be now and forever. He threatens with a sinister smile that he will do something to her in front of the dead body of his interlocutor. Yuan stretches his hand forward in concentration, surrounded by green flames, demonstrating maximum fortitude. Yuan delivers a powerful blow surrounded by bright green energy. The unknown person screams "You!" as his body is torn apart in a violent explosion. Yuan is surprised by the creature's weakness despite the spider card's blessing, and recounts his words about it being too weak to resist capture. Yuan warns all candidates in the abyss to learn from this and avoid taking rash risks, addressing the interlocutor standing with his back to him. She is surprised, and he says that someone just went hunting for the unfortunate soul. The round table room announces Morong Yuan's death and discusses whether to continue the exam after losing one of the top 5 participants. She rushes forward, wondering if the mark of a master servant has disappeared since childhood, and if Ling Yuan could have killed her cousin. She anxiously reflects that her life may have been saved by the legendary guardian man her older sister entrusted her with protecting. A desert field with huge bone horns and a skull against a stormy sky with lightning, labeled Abyss Battlefield. Yuan swings his glowing blades in rapid succession, taking down multiple enemies at once in a fast-paced combat sequence. She swings her sword with her eyes closed, surrounded by glowing streams of energy against a dark sky. She warns little brother Lin of the great danger in the exam and says that with little sister Morong he will be safe. In the desert area, it is announced that the difficulty has been increased and the competition rules now require collecting monster limbs. The purple-haired man warns them to take their time and find out what kind of monsters they are, turning to the rest of the team. Yuan stands against a backdrop of rocks, looking thoughtfully into the distance with his hand in his pocket. Yuan explains that the government is looking for the crystal of transcendence, which is the key for awakened ones to move to the level of transcendence. A man with purple hair talks loudly about 1,000,000 points, and a woman with blue hair listens to him with surprise and crossed arms. The image shows a man with a serious expression against a red sky, looking worried and about to say something. 4 men in uniform walk between the rocks, and one of them notices that everything is happening too fast to have time to think. Yuan interacts with a holographic interface, examining a multi-tentacled, single-eyed creature that appears before him. A dark figure with wings and glowing eyes hovers in the fog, surrounded by a mystical purple light. The screen shows 4 participants with their names and numbers: Huang Ying, Kang Mo, Zhang Shengyun, and Lu Yurong. She expresses surprise and anger, and he looks worried and tries to explain. Yuan reasons that the enemy is faster than him, and he must either outpace them to save the angel or snipe from afar as they hunt. Yuan orders to go at full speed and be ready to ambush at the critical moment while the rushing monsters grapple with each other. 3 men look at a man with red hair standing in front of them, who turns his back to them as if preparing for an important event. She stands in a white cloak against a pink sky, looking thoughtfully into the distance. He ponders thoughtfully about what tricks someone used to get so high in the rankings. She explains that he has attracted several top dojos with offers of peace, and if he signs the contract, he will not be contacted. Yuan thinks he should find him first and force him to sign a contract with the Fire Dragon Dojo, so that no one will stand up for him even if he gets killed on the street. Yuan and the other man watch as a bright, glowing column of energy crashes into the ground with force. Yuan and the other 2 men look anxious and tense, as if faced with an unexpected problem. The red-haired woman confidently declares that he will definitely not escape her grasp. Yuan said that they should stop there, as he needed to prepare to enter chaos while the demon sealed in the card was hovering nearby. She suddenly landed on the ground between two bushes, clearly surprised by what was happening around her. Yuan approaches the girl with long ponytails, and she reacts with surprise at his appearance. The image shows a girl with pink hair who looks surprised and slightly embarrassed. The image shows someone suddenly dropping to their knees, creating the effect of hitting the ground. She cries and thanks for saving her, expressing strong emotions. The image shows a man holding back tears, his mouth slightly open and beads of moisture visible around him. She cries and tries to hold back her tears, expressing strong emotions. Yuan gently touches the head of a crying pink-haired girl, trying to calm her down. She cries, holding back tears and quietly saying, Yuan looks forward with a slight smile, expressing calmness and goodwill. She assured him that she would not compete with her older sister for him and simply wanted to repay him by inviting him to go together. Yuan watches as a powerful purple beam of energy shoots up from the ground, tearing apart the space around him. Two characters look up in surprise, one of them wondering if what is happening is a miracle. Yuan watches as many people are trapped in glowing purple columns, with a figure with a halo glowing brightly in the center. Yuan and the two companions fly forward rapidly, expressing determination and tension. Yuan and the other man panic and discuss how there was no one near the angel before, and he can't understand how that is possible. A figure with wings and a halo rises in a blaze of purple light, surrounded by energy and streams of light. Yuan with red eyes and blue wings looks away, lost in dark thoughts against a purple sky. Yuan stands on top of a cliff watching the horizon, while below another man looks up with a thoughtful expression. She turned her head sharply, expressing strong surprise and bewilderment. She clasped her hands together and looked into the distance with concentration, blushing slightly. A figure with wings and a halo hovers in a bright fiery light, creating the impression of a powerful and mystical presence. Numerous sharp stakes are set up on the deserted ground, surrounded by white spots resembling clouds or smoke. Yuan and the others notice the approaching danger. One of them warns that the situation is about to start. Yuan is surrounded by bright glowing lines and wings, creating a powerful and impressive sight. The image shows a powerful explosion with fire and smoke covering the ground, with no characters visible. Yuan looks away with a serious expression, as if considering an important decision. He screams in panic that they will die, feeling the air become heavy, and behind him the hooded man expresses fear. Yan reports that the Death Angel has suddenly evolved from A rank to S rank, making it impossible to deal with. One reported that 5 great leaders of the fortress had already been called for reinforcements and asked to wait. Yuan and the other two are looking tensely at something ahead, one of them expressing concern and the girl trying to hide her fear. She stands with her arms crossed and declares that she is the only one you can rely on. He asked with a grin if he deserved to be saved. Against the backdrop of the sunset sky stands a confident woman with long red hair in a red suit and a white cloak, looking into the distance. A man with purple hair and another watches a woman with red hair turns towards them, preparing for action. He looks away with determination and begins to speak, expressing his thoughts or feelings. Yuan stands quietly while the other two argue and express concern, one of them exclaiming in fear. She confidently holds a glowing staff surrounded by purple energy and looks forward with a slight smile, radiating strength and determination. Yuan and the other man in the purple jacket look anxious and tense, both sweating and reacting to something sudden. The image shows a confident woman with red hair in a white coat and red suit, crossing her arms and smiling slightly. She looks sternly and demands an answer. Yuan closes his eyes and thinks intently, his image seemingly reflected behind him. Yuan stands with his back to the group, and the woman in red declares that under pressure from the strongest woman, everyone must kneel. The image shows a woman with red hair turning around suddenly in fear, expressing strong surprise and alarm. Yuan placed his hand on his chest, expressing seriousness or determination. He sees a woman with a fiery aura rushing at him with her fist ready to strike. She delivers a powerful blow, causing a bright explosion and destruction around her. She turns back as if she's about to leave or notices something behind her. He panics as he realizes he can't move, expressing surprise and fear. She stands tense and angry, expressing strong emotions and readiness for action. Yuan flies towards a huge glowing object and asks if his touch is what made the enemy's body weak and limp. Yuan explains that the paralyzing bug card is useful and can temporarily block the opponent's actions. Yuan and 2 men discuss why the strongest woman is inexperienced, with one looking surprised and the other tense. The woman with red hair screams that the matter is not over yet. Yuan floats in the air, surrounded by a blue glow, looking forward with confidence. A woman with gray hair screams that someone is going to burn, while another with short blonde hair looks scared and worried. Yuan falls headlong into a vortex of fiery energy, surrounded by red and yellow flashes. Yuan floats in the air, surrounded by red energies, and looks at a glowing vortex with the silhouette of an angel inside. The four characters are in shock and discuss why the angel isn't attacking them, expressing surprise and dismay. Yuan looks forward thoughtfully, his golden brown eyes reflecting his inner experiences. Yuan looks closely at the card with the image of the monster, holding it up to his face. A woman with red hair accuses her interlocutor of using dirty tricks and asks if he thinks he can hide there. Yuan stands with his arms outstretched against the sky, as if preparing for something important or demonstrating confidence. Wen says the real show is about to begin, standing against a blue sky. Wen stares forward with concentration, his eyes glowing a bright red light, emitting powerful energy. In the light of the fiery glow, a silhouette with wings appears, radiating powerful energy, ready for action. On the deserted ground, falling fiery swords glow brightly, creating a powerful explosion in clouds of smoke. The man panics and asks what is going on, while Yuan watches with concern. Yuan looks closely at the glowing black object in his hand, smiling with interest. She declares with a determined expression that you can hide for a short time, but not forever, and warns that sooner or later they will be found. Several people are praying and hoping that they won't meet a strong opponent in the upcoming battle in the arena. Yuan says he must hold out until the 5 hall leaders arrive and notices that it's starting. Several people watch bright flashes of energy in the sky, feeling the tension and surprise of what is happening. A figure with wings hovers against a red sky with intersecting laser lines. 2 fighters, Gu Zheng and Lin Yuzhe, stand on a floating platform surrounded by red laser lines preparing to fight. The red-haired man begs Yuan not to attack each other, and he agrees to this condition. Yuan stabbed another man in the back, and he apologized and quickly retreated. Yuan stands while the other man lies on the ground and says he has no choice. He must survive. A woman in red stands with her arms crossed, while 2 men on either side react in surprise to what is happening around her. A man with blue hair stands with his eyes closed and his arms crossed, while a woman in red radiates light while standing with her arms raised. Yuan looks ahead with a smile, and she reacts with surprise and alarm to what is happening next to her. He has red hair and says something with a smile, hiding his eyes behind shadows. Yuan stands with his arms crossed, watching a woman in a red suit and white cloak who looks confidently into the distance. Yuan is standing with a group of people, and one of the women says with a look of disdain that someone is very pathetic. He asks with red eyes, threateningly, how he wants to die, on his knees or crawling. Yuan looks on with a slight smile, expressing calmness and confidence. She flies forward with a glowing fist, creating explosive energy around her. The man panics and says that a blow from the strongest woman can destroy the entire battlefield, and that the man will be completely destroyed while the woman prepares to attack. Wen clenches his fist, emitting bright energy and preparing for a powerful punch. Wen throws a powerful punch, meeting with an equally powerful punch surrounded by bright energy. Wen collides forcefully with the enemy, causing a massive explosion and destruction around them. He forcefully throws the enemy into the air, creating a powerful explosion below. Yuan wonders if he's going blind while looking at something in front of him. Yuan and another man react with their mouths open in shock to the unexpected event. Yuan looks at a card with a monster on a background of red chains. Wen strikes hard, causing a bright explosion of energy as a glowing vortex surrounds 2 haloed figures below. She, wounded and angry, lies on the ground in front of Yuan, trying to say something. Yuan stands and the woman with red hair gets angry and throws a piece of paper at him. Yuan warns that if the contract is not signed, the man will disappear in 10 seconds, but promises to return his freedom in 3 years. She cries while reading the letter and clutches the pen, expressing strong emotions and despair. The character with wings says that no one expected such an end and orders to destroy the enemy with a powerful light blast. Yuan holds up a card with a monster image on it, holding it up to his face and looking forward with a serious expression. She, wounded and with her clothes torn, sits on her knees, looking up at the glowing silhouette. He has pointed ears and white hair and looks worried as he feels a sudden pain in his shoulder. Yuan is floating in the air, and she, with red hair, looks worried and tense, as if preparing for an upcoming conflict. She shouts with determination that she will give it her all and attacks, raising her glowing spear. Wen uses a powerful attack called Windblade Frenzy Slash, creating a bright vortex of energy in the sky. He screams in rage, surrounded by light and energy, expressing strong emotions. Against the backdrop of a bright explosion, a woman with golden wings appears, letting out a scream expressing strong emotion or pain. The image shows a woman with red hair receiving a powerful blow to the chest, causing her to bleed and be thrown back. Wen concentrates on channeling energy from his hands, surrounded by a glowing background. Wen suddenly kicks, creating a blurring effect and powerful movement. Wen hovers in a glow with a halo and wings, surrounded by glowing purple lines against a blue sky. Wen soars into the sky, surrounded by glowing streams and a reddish cloud background. Yuan asks in surprise if the angel was defeated, while the other man in purple expresses concern and sweats. Yuan looks forward with concentration, radiating calm and confidence.